Boom, what's up, everybody? Got West Coast legend now. I guess what were you before, like Midwest? Which we'll get into that. I don't even know, like, actually, like where you're totally from yet. But Ryan Deakin, welcome to the show. Super pumped to dive in and just kind of see where the conversation goes. But before we go anywhere, wild or funny story, what you got for everybody?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Love the name. And yeah, I think first thing that came to mind is, we were on a road trip coming back from must have been a duel or something. And like, it's snowy out. We're like sliding lane to lane. And our 25 pounder decides to grab the mic on the bus and we started doing karaoke and it kind of passed the 7 hour drive. It was pretty funny. We got coaches up there, you got everybody went but one. Timmy, love Timmy. He's like used to be the head coach at Northwestern. Now he just helps out. He's the man. And
Yeah.
we tried to get him up there. He was the only one that wouldn't go up. We got everybody else to go sing karaoke. It was pretty funny after everyone's just kind of dragging on the bus on a long ride. So that was it was a lot of fun. You kind of had to be their moment, but some interesting song choices by some wrestlers.
I believe it.
So
So that where are you originally from? Does snow like I know like I'm originally from Alabama, so like driving in the snow is that's a no bueno for me.
yeah, I'm originally from Colorado, so
Okay.
definitely used to
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
snow. But yeah, Colorado's not as bad as everybody thinks. Chicago was definitely a little bit colder than Colorado.
Yeah, 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 totally. Well, cool, man. That's kind of a good segue is I guess what some of the stuff like I want to pick your brain about is obviously I'm sure you get asked a lot like the transition for like from like athlete to like coaching, but like one thing like super in particular I think of like when I talk with athletes or teams, like some of the best way or one of the easiest, most clear ways to have success is to, I call it like a single mission focus. And so I'm curious, like for you, like as an athlete, the success that you had, like what was your approach to kind of go into things? Because it's like, and honestly, I just love your opinion on this. Is I just feel like a lot of times when you talk with athletes or teams, and they got the long list of goals of like 40 different things, and like 2 weeks later, it's like shoved in the book bag, and like a month later, they have like no idea like what's on that list. And so it's like kind of like when you get in the car to go on a vacation, like you got the destination, right? Like exactly, like ultimately, like where it
Yeah.
is that you want to finish up. And so I'm curious, the success that you had, like what was your approach going into seasons, and then kind of like how has that transitioned into conversations and like leading teams now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm gonna caveat like to start, like everything I say could be wrong. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
No, totally. That's our
there's a
share
lot
your
of
journey. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
lot of different ways to skin a cat. I think something that's unique, not unique, but something that I thought was cool about my story that I like to bring into coaching is like I don't think I have a unique story. And I've thought about this a little bit. Like I was around a lot of different people. I was around like, a lot of different wrestlers throughout my career. And it's like I don't think it's these huge monumental differences between,
Yeah.
the guys that do really great and the guys that are, kind of mediocre. They're, a D1 wrestler, but kind of didn't start or broke the starting lineup towards the end of their career. I think there's like little things that stack over time, and it's kind of like anything in life, in my opinion, like kind of just like compounding interest, right? And so like stacking those little things. I think something that worked for me that probably will kill me outside of being a performance athlete is like kind of like an anxious approach of like just always, knowing someone else is out there working and trying to
Yeah.
continue to work. And I think the cool thing about wrestling, it's one-on-one. So it's like I don't want to go out there and get embarrassed. So I'm going to do everything in my power to not get embarrassed. And so it's your lifestyle versus your other athlete's lifestyle. And um, I really think, fundamentals and stacking those little things day by day makes a big difference. I
Yeah.
think part of that too is like it's really hard to go anywhere on like a suicide pace. Like we are definitely working
Yeah.
hard every single day. But you got to be in the right training environment where you can do this for a long period of time. Because I don't care how hard you work for a year, you're going to get beat by the guy that's doing it for 10, 20, 30 years. And so making that sustainable, I think that's environment, that's your village, your support behind the athlete. I think I was really lucky to have great parents, great siblings, great friends, great coaches, great teammates, great university behind me. And so I think that's an underlooked part of it too. We play
Yeah.
handball to warm up every day. if nothing else, if I feel like crap, I'm cutting weight. I'm looking forward to that 10,
Yeah,
15
yeah.
minutes of playing handball. And then 10 minutes after practice when everyone's dead and just sitting around in the locker room, just talking smack and having fun, And so I think that's a big part of it. I think that team culture you hear a lot. I think it keeps people in it. I saw a lot of people growing up that were phenomenal athletes that burnt out. They were 12
Yeah.
years old, going to everything, winning everything, and then when your dad wants it more than you, I think it's a tough environment. So I think as a coach too, it's tough because I think there's very repeatable things. I think it's keeping the process fun because I think the best way to get good at something is do it, a million times in a row. And that's like kind of mundane and not fun and not a sexy answer. Um, but you stack a bunch of volume, you stack a bunch of confidence in your favor because you're like, I know how to do this. I've done this a million times. And then it's kind of exposure therapy. Go out there and wrestle a bunch. And so I think I got lucky with, my dad took me all over the country. Some of my fondest memories growing up were, getting in a car or getting on an airplane and going somewhere for the weekend with my dad to some tournament. And, sometimes I get my butt kicked and sometimes it would be like, I come back and like I can hang with these guys. And I think showing up every day doing that and then slowly believe in yourself and then continuing to put your lifestyle against somebody else's lifestyle. I think it was just like just keep at it. I'm a slow learner. I've said it a bunch of times, but like it took me every match of my career to win a national title. And so like I stayed the course, and I think there was course
Yeah.
corrections for sure. But I had, Andrew Howe did a bunch for me. He coached me and was like, there was some times where it's like, hey, we need to fix this, this, and this. And sometimes it was like, hey man, you had a bad day. Like
Yeah.
stay the
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. It's like, because you bring up like, because you talk like a lot about like the basics. I call them like BBs, right? Like at some point, like if you get shot with 1,000 BBs, like that shit's gonna hurt, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so it's like it's those little things like you stack on top of each other like over and over and
Yeah.
over again. And so it's like I heard somebody say that repetition, that stacking the proof of like doing it over and over and over again is like what reduces the anxiety and turns it into excitement, right? Because like to your point, like you said, it's like it's boring and it's mundane, but at the end of the day, it's like I think about it like for me, it's like if I'm gonna go like speak somewhere and I practice the speech 100 times and I'm so bored with it, then by the time that I like have to stand in front of somebody and do it, it's like okay, like let's just freaking go. Right. Like
Yeah.
I've done
Yeah,
it. And so it's
absolutely.
like I think about it from like a performance standpoint. It's probably the same thing, like, like penetration steps were like earth shattering at one point, and then like, you get to college, it's like, oh, we gotta do these in warm-ups again. So it's like, I guess like, is that kind of like a message too? It's just like, I mean, really with any sport, like the basics win, right? Like ultimately, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it gets to a point where it's like once you're good enough at something, you can start breaking rules. But like you need to have that strong foundation. And even like the really good scramblers, really good like whatever guys, like they got really good at the basics. And then you get so proficient at the basics that you can start kind of creating your own, adding your like twist to it, add a little art to it. But I think that's like it's tough too, because you want to. I mean, I think about like showing moves at wrestling camps, and you always got to throw in some fun moves for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
kids,
yeah, for sure.
right? Like, and that's part of environment and keeping people around. But it's like, hey, I know you guys don't like this, but like, I actually think you get the most out of like, I'll show you little tweaks, little whatever. But like, let's go over a single leg for 5 hours, and I bet you get better at a single leg, and I bet that has a lot more. Um, a more positive impact on your career than me showing you a super duck and, some high flying headlock and stuff like that. And so I think, there's times and place for that. And the people that are good at those crazy moves, I think it's underrated how much of the foundation they have already before they're playing with stuff like that.
That's a really good point because like hearing it from like, especially like in the wrestling world too, is like I'm probably gonna steal that. I'll always give you credit, but like at some point of like when you get so good at the fundamentals, then you can start breaking rules. And I think in sports, as like let's relate it to wrestling because I hear kids say this is like, well, Burrow shoots from his knees. I'm like, well, when you win an Olympic gold medal, you can shoot from your knees, right? Like,
Yeah,
and so it's like
absolutely.
that's a really good way of like putting it is like he's mastered the basics and the fundamentals first before it's like starting to like test and tweak other ways and methods of like scoring and stuff like that. That's really good. That's really good.
I don't know. It just, yeah. I
Yeah.
had some great coaches that, yeah, fundamentally drove that point home.
Yeah. And so for you, like, I guess like like competing and then like again like now like messaging like for athletes too is going back to like what you said a little bit earlier is like the difference between good and great or ordinary and extraordinary or whatever we want to call it is just like it's honestly a smaller gap than like most people think. And so I'll tell a story. Do you remember wrestled at WVU Donnie Jones?
Yeah,
Okay, so he was my roommate for a couple years, and so it's like
awesome.
after one of the I don't remember what year it was for him, sophomore, junior year, or whatever. And I just remember asking him like afterwards, like how the like season. He's just like, I feel like I'm so close. And I was like, well, like why do you say that? And he was like, because at the time that year, Jared King had won NCAAs, and he was like, I literally beat King in the duel in the regular season, but I didn't even All American at NCAAs. And I was like, oh shit, the gap really is. It's like the teeny tiny little thing. It's the BBs, right? Like the difference in
Yeah.
like being a national champ and even being an All American.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That like I think that's why too, like everybody's like, oh, wrestling's, 90% mental. And I think that's a big part of it too, is I had a coach growing up that said to me right before I went off to college, and I kind of like I listened to him. I was like, yeah, but I didn't really like internalize it until I got to college. And he's like, hey man, you're competing with like 8 people for a national title. Everybody
Mm,
else will kind of like party it away or like get distracted with something else. And but he's like, those 8 people are going to be extremely focused. Like you got to beat those 8 people, and that's like a tall task. And yeah, I think like when you get to a lot of things got to go right. Like you got to be healthy
yeah.
at the right time. You got to
Yep.
have a good weight cut. You got to be mentally in the right spot. You got to like have some, I don't know, little things go your way. It's like football is always a game of inches. I think wrestling is the same way. But then there's also, just having that X factor and figuring it out when stuff goes wrong. And so I think that's why it's super impressive when people just repeatedly, stay at the
Yeah.
top for a really long time, is there's a lot of things that could go wrong. Yeah, and so I think winning's a skill. I think there's some people that naturally like want the ball when they're down by two and there's 30 seconds left. And then there's
Yep.
some people that like shy away from that. And I think you can train that. But some people are naturally like better at that. And some people got to really work on like calming their nerves, their mental like side of it. And I think as a coach, you got to kind of realize what kind of athlete like thrives in what environment. There's some people that want all the
Yeah.
pressure, duel on the line, 30 seconds left. Like they want that. And then there's some guys that like, don't put me last in the duel, because if it comes down to me, like I'm not going out there and performing, And so I
Yeah.
think you kind of tailor training like that to athletes. And yeah, it's interesting. I think you're trying to look for not cookie cutter approaches, but you got to coach to masses in a certain aspect, but also you want to know what's your biggest bang for your buck per athlete. And so that's important to know too. And like kind of knowing your athletes comes with time and by talking to athletes and understanding and watching them compete.
Yeah. 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 Going back to you mentioned like one of your coaches there, like while you were in college, just being buzzword, like kind of a mentor, right? Aside from like wrestling of like, hey,
Yeah.
like, you just had a bad day, stay the course. Like just constantly like keeping you focused. I guess what's give a little insight. 'Cause to me, it's like when I say coaching, I mean like non like technical skill set type things. I just mean like have mentor buzzword, right? Somebody like their big brother, whatever you want to call it. Um, was that beneficial for you like while you were an athlete, and is that spilled over into like you saw value in that, and it's like I want to make sure that like obviously you're going to relate and have different connections with like different guys on the teams, they just relate to certain people better, but how is that kind of like spilled over into like coaching from like the non-technical, right, the big brother, the mentor aspect of it?
Yeah, no, I think I felt really lucky in college. I had, phenomenal coaches. I had Matt Storniolo, Andrew Howe, Jimmy Kennedy was there, Brewer was there, Mike McMullen was there, Emery Parker was like, there was a long list of really good coaches. But the whole time I was in college, I had Storny and Howe,
Yeah.
and they were both phenomenal for me. Howe was like you're saying, like kind of that mentor where he was, I mean, I wrestled him probably. We had our set day, so it was like Monday or Tuesday we'd wrestle, and then when I was cutting weight at the end of the week, I'd wrestle with him, and I'd watch film with him at least once a week. And so, like having someone buy into you like that, I think one, it makes you you're like, this guy's investing in me. Like
Yeah.
I can't go out there and just like not try. Like I got to go out there and give it my all. Like this person is spending time away from his family to like help me achieve my goals. Like he's being super selfless, waking up at, I have class. I'm like, hey, can you meet me at 7 a.m.? And he lives an hour and a half away. Like I
Oh,
didn't real, I don't realize these things in college. You just take it for granted. And it's like,
yeah,
these guys are sacrificing a bunch with little kids and wives and everything. And so I think that's huge. And then also just like somebody that's got your back, like in anything you need, they're talking to you about it, helping you out with it. Um, I think it's a huge thing, and I think it's something that sports get right. And I'd love to, I think it's a great thing for your professional life. Find somebody that's doing something you want to do and go like, hey, can I be a sponge? Like, how can I soak this up? Can we grab coffee? And and I think that's cool. And I think I didn't realize the value of that until I kind of accidentally got into coaching. And I think
yeah,
it's one of the most rewarding things you can do is like look back down the ladder and help somebody else up. And having some perspective, getting a little bit older, like it was cool. I was coaching last 2 years at Stanford, like, right out of college. So I felt like I could relate to these guys.
yep, yep.
And I had groups where, in college, I saw like how would be in the room before we'd walk in, and it's like he's blaring drop kick Murphys and just lifting before practice. And I'm like, how do you not want to run through a brick wall when your coach is like side by side tonal with you, like blood, sweat, So I just think like I thought about that a lot when I was coaching. It's like your athletes, they listen to you, they watch what you do too. And
Yeah,
so I think you get a lot more respect in wrestling. And it's a different kind of coaching. Like football, you're not strapping up and hitting
yeah,
your athletes. Wrestling's like, hey man, I'm gonna wrestle with you. Like we're gonna go at it. And if you punch me in the face, like great, that's awesome. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and I think that's why you got younger wrestling coaches, but I also think it's a so much tighter bond. And I think you earn a lot more respect from your athlete by, running through them in a practice than just like telling them like, hey, fix this, this, and this. They listen a little bit more when you put up 20 points on them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's like, I think to your point is you like, I think you quoting you is kind of like that's one of the things like sports got like right. And is I think it's becoming more of a norm where I think coaching is you can tell me you're in the game, you're literally in the game, is like coaching is requiring like more connections versus like 20, 30 years ago it was more of like just do what I say, right? It was
Yeah.
more of just like here's the practice, here's what we're going to do, feet on the line, ass on the line, like whatever it is, and like this is just the way it's going to be versus like I feel like again it's not right, wrong, good, bad, and different. It's just like I think people have changed, and so it requires like more of like a relationship and connection base. And um, yeah, it sounds like you had that, and that's definitely like spilled over into like what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think you respect somebody a lot more that leads from the front. At least I feel that way. I think most wrestlers feel that way. And so like, yeah, talk cool, but like talk's cheap. Show me what you're doing, and then it's like, okay, I'll follow you, through that. And I think that's not to say you can't be a great coach or great leader without, I think there's a lot of different leadership styles, and part of
Yeah,
being a good leader is knowing what different people need in that leadership. But I think specifically in sports, it's a great way to be, and there's you're kind of flowing through different leadership styles. I think like you said, especially nowadays, um in college wrestling with the way transfer portals and loyalty is, like I think you got a lot much it's probably something you need to do just to make your athletes better anyways, but it's probably
yeah,
good to do as well to keep your athletes around, because like there was no way I was leaving Northwestern because I had a close relationship with my coaches and my teammates, but if you have coaches that you're not close with, it's like it's a little bit easier to go transfer somebody somewhere else, go do something else. Um, and then something that I think kind of tangentially related to this is I had a coach tell me once growing up, he's like, I definitely play favorites. Like I'm going to invest in the kids that show enthusiasm. And I was like, I kind of love that. Like when you hear it, you're like, you're not supposed to play favorites, but 100% when you're coaching an athlete, like if they come up to you and they're asking you questions, they're asking for like extra help, like they actually care instead of just like, yeah, yeah, I got it. Um, you're like, I want to work with that kid. Like that is awesome. They care.
like I don't know if you can see like literally I was had a kid is play he's a college quarterback, and so it's like we were having a conversation session, whatever you want to call it, mentorship, and it's like literally I said coaches want to coach kids that what, and he's like care. I'm like yes, and I was like how do you show that you care? He was like ask questions. I was like yes, Because like no matter what, it's like I tell them, is like psychology works even if you know it's being done to you, right? It's
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
reason my wife can go buy something that says 50% off and still know that you're paying $300 overpriced for. It's like it still worked on you, damn it. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's like, but like you're just drawn, right? And it's like, no matter if I'm speaking at like a camp, when I tell kids, is like, I'm like, if you want to stand out, then like you have to show that you care. You're actual, like everyone here is talented, right? Everyone here has like some kind of ability, right? To some level. It's like, if you want to be remembered, is like, no, you're not going to remember the kid that like shot high crotches, right? It's like the one that came
Yeah.
and asked you that question. We were like, damn, like I've never thought about that. Like that's a good question. And it's like if you saw that kid a year later at the camp, you'd be like, yeah, dude, I remember you had me that wild, crazy question. So it's amazing that like I'm gonna like literally pull this clip and start like showing people. I'm like, see, they're literally saying the same thing because it does. I think that okay, so here's a good question for you too, because that's a big like concept for me in terms of helping athletes understand the power in questions. And so, how much do you, whether it be watching film, whether it just be kind of like big brother mentorship, how much of it, like, is that like a part of your message in the sense of like, please, like, ask me questions? I remember, like, I tell like mine, I'm like, literally annoy me. Like, you, like, ask, be obnoxious with your questions.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that's super important. I definitely always asking for feedback. I think part of that too is like, listen, I like there's a respectful way to do stuff, right? But like
Yeah.
100% you want an athlete to like, if you have a question about something or you want to challenge something, like I love it. Like if I'm wrong, awesome. Like
Yeah.
because I don't want to teach you something wrong. I don't want you to like I think about it like I had a great mentor in college that taught our Bible study for Northwestern, and he was kind of like it was the first time I had somebody where I could like drill him down with questions about like
Yeah.
Christianity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there'd be times I'm like, hey man, I'm not like, I'm sorry. I just like, I have this question. He's like, no, he's like, I like, if I believe this is the most important thing, like, I want it to be foolproof, like, try to poke holes in it. And so I kind of think that's a good approach. I think, not trying to take stuff personally and be like, listen, I'm with you. Like, let's figure this out. And then I think also bringing in other people, like, that's the best thing about having other coaches too, is like,
Yep.
hey, if I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. I'll do some homework, or we pull in somebody else and we figure that out. Um, but I think kind of taking your ego out of it and being like, but I think part of that too is like you meet people where they're at, you build rapport with
Hmm.
somebody, and then they're more comfortable asking those questions. So I don't know, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
situation. But like I hope my athletes know that like, hey, I'm open to questions, I'm open to feedback, I'm open to like that's how we grow. If you got feedback for me, like let's do it.
And I always say too is like when you're challenging, whether it be like faith based or athletic based, is like if you ask me a question about something that I believe and I don't know the answer, then it's not my belief, right? Like if I
Yeah,
can't like
yeah,
tell you like why I believe that, then it's not my belief. It's something that I
yeah,
heard or something gave me, right? And so I actually
yeah,
use that example with faith. It was like with the athletes, I'm like, if somebody comes up to you and is like, why do you believe in God? Like, why is faith such an important part of your life? And your response is like, because my parents made me go to church on Sundays growing up. And it's like, I would challenge that, right? And so it's
yeah,
like, because I think it does one of two things for us as human beings. And like with your athletes, when they're, if you don't know, when you do go find the answer, it either affirms what you believe even harder, right? Or it makes you go back and be like, maybe I don't believe that. Maybe this is a bad way to approach this. Maybe this is not the right way. And so it's like to your point of like encouraging that challenge of like, can I tell you why I believe this is the best way or the best, whatever, based off of like what I believe.
yeah. No, 100%. And I think something like wrestling too, there's so many different ways to do something. So it's like, I'll disagree with the coach. And it's like, I wouldn't do it that way, but it works great for you. So you should 100% do it that way. And like vice versa. It's like, maybe they wouldn't do it the way I do it, but it's like, if it works for me, and so I think there's general truths and stuff. And then there's some stuff that like, there's nuance. Especially like you're talking about, I mean, great example. We're talking about shot defense stuff. And one of the coaches I was with, like, he does it completely differently than like all the other coaches, but he's shorter. And it's like it
Mm,
worked better for him because he had to slide off shots differently. And so I don't know. I think, like you're saying, it's really important. And I think that's one of the coolest things about coaching too. I think if you're doing camps, especially in college, like it makes you look at wrestling a different way. Because I
yeah.
think a lot of high level athletes are like, they don't know why they do something, they just know it works. And so like thinking about it and like having to teach it, you understand it at a higher level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So how many I'm curious, especially I don't know, percentage wise in terms of like athlete like high quality and it can be outside of like wrestling too, is like how many high level athletes do you know struggle with actually like teaching because of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors. I don't know how to answer that because I think some people are like a little bit shy, and so you put them in front of 100 or 50 kids, and like they stutter a little bit, they mess something up. I think it took me a while to like figure out camps. You know, early on in college, you're like
Mm,
kind of doing camps. Um, and then you kind of learn like, okay, this is what most people are struggling with. Here's kind of your
yeah.
series you go over. And so I think you get a lot better as you refine that and go through the process. I also think like most athletes don't think about a camp. They're like, hey, I'm just going to show up and teach wrestling. I know how to wrestle. It's like, maybe write down a plan. Be like, hey, this is the series I'm going to go through. These are the points I'm going to go to, you know, and I think, and I learned all those the hard way. I had some great coaches that helped me out when I was like, yeah, that was like tough to fill that 2 hours. And now it's like, you know, you walk into a camp and it's like, I got different routes I can go with stuff. But like that, I think just like anything in life, over prepare and it'll be easy. So I don't know, but I have seen a lot of high level wrestlers where you're like, hey, show me that. And they're like, oh yeah, I just do this. You're like, all right, so why? You're like, I don't know, it just works. It's like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, well, it's fun. The reason I asked too is I know um at a very well-known school, he's a gymnastics coach. And when I was talking with him, I was like what's one of your biggest struggles like as you've been in like coaching? And he was just like I had to learn to actually break things down because he's like, I would just go do it and be like, just do
yeah.
it like this. And they're like, I can't do that. And he's like, but like, just do it like this. And he was like, I used to get so frustrated because I couldn't understand. I was like, yeah, you're a freak athlete. That's why. It's like,
Yeah.
you just go do whatever you wanted. Like there was no technique to it at all.
That's funny. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. And genetically, like some people are different. And yeah, no, 100%. It's a struggle for sure.
And I think too is actually like it's amazing and this is what I tell like a lot of athletes too, is you can break it down into like daily, weekly, monthly, a season, or an event like a camp or something like that. But like I just find to your point, like of preparation, it's amazing of like what 20 to 30 minutes of prep work will do to like you will stand out amongst like 90% because most people don't. They literally just like go in and wing it. And so it's like I think that's part of like my challenge with athletes. And I'd be curious of like and I actually have a story on this too, but like your challenge with athletes of like did you take 5 minutes to prep for today's practice, right? To really think about like what is it that you want to get done? Like if you only got one, I call it like the domino, right? Like if you only knock one domino over and it could trickle over into some others, but like coming back to that kind of like single mission, that narrow minded of like, it's getting away from the answers of like, well, what do you want to do today? It's like, I want to get better. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Right. Like,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like, I'm
Get
curious of
specific.
like your conversations with that in terms of like preparation, whether it be practice, whether it be a competition, or even over into like camps and other things, or shoot, we can go down like, I'm sure it's like, if you go to Bible study and stuff like that, there's a certain level of like prep. It's like, hey, like I really want to understand this better. And so I'm going to make sure to ask about this because I really feel like that's the domino that will help me like grasp so many more of these like messages.
Yeah. I think that's, a great point. Great question. I think like trying to reiterate, like you gotta have a plan for practice. Like you walk in the practice room, but I think it's not just like you said, hey, I want to get better today, or hey, I want to win this tournament. I want to do this. It's like you start with your end goal at mind. Like, okay, your end goal is, be a national champ, be an all-American, whatever that end goal is. And then you work backwards and you break it down into smaller goals.
Yeah.
Um, I think people do a good job of doing that once a year, and then you kind of forget about it, or you come back to it because you took a hard loss and now there's some emotional charge to it. Um, I wish I could say I was different. I feel like I definitely wrote goals down. I was chasing stuff. I'd have practice plans, but I wasn't perfect with that stuff. And I think that part of that is just being kind of young and immature, I think. And as I get older, like you're saying, I think the value of take 5 minutes. Like you're going to go network with somebody for, a job or something. Go on LinkedIn and spend 5 minutes. Find some kind of connection, find some kind of question you can ask them where they're like, oh, this person actually looked me up and is like interested in this.
Yeah.
And it's like it's an interesting discussion and you stand out, like you said. And I think taking that approach to a lot of different things is important. Life's busy, stuff happens. I think it's prioritizing things for sure. But with sports, like, yeah, I think people would benefit from spending a little bit more time on like mental training,
Yeah.
and then talking to some people about like, and if you don't know where to go, I think some of that too is like, okay, I need to get better. But like, go talk to a coach or go talk to a parent that watches you wrestle all the time and be like, where do you see gaps? What can I improve on? What do you think I'm doing well? What do you think I'm doing bad? And I think that's where mentorship comes in too, is,
Yep.
I think, and that's kind of a coach's job too, is like guiding them down that path of like, hey, I want to reinforce like this didn't work. And sometimes they listen and sometimes they got to go lose a match in that position to circle back and like, hey, can we revisit this one more time? Are you listening now? Like this is what happened. And so, and I'm not special at that too. There was times my
Yeah.
coach told me something, I lose a match, and then I'm like, all right, yeah, he was right. I gotta,
Damn it. Well, you brought up like I'm curious about this too. Is and I'll there's a reason why I'm curious because obviously it's a little bit like what I do because you brought up like the mental training side of that, and so it's like the teams that I work with, and often one of the questions I'll ask, I'm like, okay, like pie chart, right? Like you got to divvy it up physical to mental. So we can call it like we'll just use wrestling since that's what you're here. That's what you do. So it's like success in wrestling. If you had to break it up, physical to mental, like how would you do it, right? And I've gotten an array of answers: 90-10, 80-20, 70-30, all over. Two, I've gotten somebody on a team recently gave me I think it was like 70 physical because she was like, you're not going to like my answer. It's 70 physical, 30 mental. I was like, no, it's not that I don't like your answer. But my question, and this is where I'm curious of like what your messages is to your athletes, because even in her response of like it's only 30% mental. And so I go, okay, how much time do you spend on that 30%? And she was like, none. So I was like, so what you're saying is if you're 100% healthy, which in college at the end of the season, are you going to be 100% healthy? And she was like, no. And so I was like, but let's just hypothetically say you're 100% healthy, then you're only going to accomplish 70% of what you're capable of. Like, that's tough, right? And so it's like,
Yeah.
no matter which way we divvy it up. And so I'm curious of like how was it a factor for you in your success as a competitor? And then like, how do you get guys to invest that time? Because it's like, I think a lot of times they think about the hard work and they think about the physical work, the physical labor, the sprints, the cutting weight, the going to practice, the extra lifts, or just the lifts in general. But investing in that side of like, am I really clear on my goals? Do I have somebody help guiding me on like being prepared for what I want daily, weekly, monthly? Yeah, how did you utilize it? And then like how do you make sure guys invest some time, I'm assuming, in that?
Yeah, I think a little bit of trial and error, honestly, but like you're saying, I think most athletes tend to lean towards physical stuff. Um, if not all athletes, but I think it's a lot easier. Like it's a lot easier to see these tangible things. Like I physically lifted a weight, I physically ran a mile. Like those are easy. Like your brain likes the reward system of check, did this, did that. Where it's hard to see like the gains of like, oh, I like practice mindfulness for 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. How do I tangibly like measure that? And so I think kind of gamifying it in a way that helps
Mm,
with that.
mm.
Um, I also think like your first question of what percent physical, what percent mental. Honestly, I think it's very mental, but it's like 100% physical to a certain point.
Yep.
And then because there's some athletes, like unfortunately, it's just not in the cards for them. They're never going to reach this high level. They can reach the highest level possible for them, but
Hmm.
genetically or whatever factors play in the role, like they're not going to make it there. So once you get to the highest level physically, then I think it's like, I don't know, 80% mental. So
Yeah.
it's 100% physical to a hurdle rate, and then it's 80% mental. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I just think that took me a long time to realize like there's just some people that like their best is going to be, world Olympic champ, and some people their best is going to be, going out there and just competing. And so I think I don't think we like to talk about this, and I honestly don't like talking about it either because it's like it's a part you can't really control.
Yeah.
Genetics are a part of it, so
Yep.
you can't control it. So who cares about it? Like you got to work with what you got and move forward with that. Um, I think I wish I took this seriously. Northwestern had great resources, and most colleges nowadays have some kind of sports psych on their athletic department, and
Yep.
it's way underutilized. And they're
Yep.
phenomenal. At Stanford, that we had a sports psych that was phenomenal. We go talk to him like, I want to talk to this guy, and I'm not even competing. And I took a long time, and I think part of that is like I don't know if it's like a man thing, but you're like kind of like, I don't need that. Like I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your coaches talked to you about it a little bit, but I had some coaches that were like, hey, read this book, do this. And I think towards the end of my career, I was able to realize like there were times in big matches where it's like something doesn't go my way, crowd gets a little amped up, and it's like I'm getting a little anxious. And it's like now
Hmm.
I'm making mistakes. And so once I recognized that, I don't know if that was like an X factor in me like finishing my career the way I wanted to. Um, but I think it played a huge part. And I think that like it's hard to measure something like that. There's a lot of luck involved with other areas.
Yeah.
Um, but I think part of that is like you get some of that from exposure therapy, go compete as much as you can, practice, put like high pressure situations on the line and you learn to deal with those. And then also like thinking about it, calming your nerves before matches, getting a repeatable routine, get your, warm up, your food right, your sleep
Yeah.
right, like everything that you can control. Um, and then just go out there and compete. And so I think yeah, I don't know. I think part of that too is I think honestly faith plays a big role in that. It did for me. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was, for a while, it's like your sport's your identity. And it's like if you beat me as a person instead of just beating me as a wrestler. And then it's like, I got to a point where I was around some good people and it's like, oh, I lose a match. It's like, cool. I'm still who God says I am. Like it's wrestling. The sun came up. My mom still loves me. My
Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
are still
Yeah.
here. I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And so I think everybody's got to go through that. And as much as people say they don't put their identity in their sport or they try not to, you got to always keep that in check. I think that always happens even when you're aware of it. And so I don't know. I think that's why it's important to like have stuff outside of it. Like I think I became a better wrestler when I met my wife in college. And
Yeah.
when we started dating, like I don't know, you could say that's like a distraction, but I think it was like I think it helped me. It was like a good distraction and like, oh, there's other things outside of wrestling, like I go home and we just like have fun and make dinner or go out and, do something. And so I think like it's important to be well-rounded somewhat, even though you're gonna have to put like an absurd
Yeah. And well, I think too is okay, so like identity is like my jam, right? Like I would say, like if I had to sum, so much of like what I do like into one word, it'd be like identity. And I think of like helping people. I'm curious, like your perspective on this too, is because like it's like as as human beings, like we're emotional creatures, right? And so like if I push you, you're gonna push me back, right? I punch you, you're gonna punch me back. And so it's like I think a lot of times we try to do that with emotions is like we don't want to feel something, and so we push it. And what does it do? It pushes back harder. And so then it's like not to go down like the total rabbit hole, but like we become like emotional junkies. We get addicted to it, and so we try to push harder, and it pushes harder back. And then we that becomes literally part of our identity because we need to feel that to feel normal, right? It's why
Hmm.
so many athletes struggle with like celebrating successes over a long period of time because they're like, this is like weird. Like, I don't really like bragging on myself, but like, you can go talk shit about yourself for a month and not feel bad about it because that's like a normal state, right? Like, if like
Yeah.
you hardwire yourself into that. And so, going back to like relating it to like sports is why I said the fight thing is like, I try to encourage people to, of like, yes, your sport is not 100% of who you are, but like right now in your life, it's a large chunk of your identity, and that's okay. Like, don't try to fight against it. Like, don't try to be like, wrestling is not everything. It's like, okay, it's not. Like, why are we making this such a big deal? But it is a lot. Like, it's a chunk right now in your life, right? Just like you would make as a college student is like you would make school a large chunk of your identity too, because that's, you're going to class 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, right? Then you come home and you spend time like studying and, doing all those things and taking tests. And so it's like, I think it's okay to recognize that, just not. I always say it's like when you obsess over something, you push it like further and further away. And so it's like not
Mm.
obsessing over that. Because again, like when you fight it, like again, you punch, this is just gonna punch back harder and harder and harder. And then that becomes the hurdle because then people just get so like discombobulated in their brain of like, well, I don't even know who I am. I'm like, all right, bro, chill.
Yeah, I'd be curious. That's interesting. And I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know where I stand with it because I think in some ways balance is important, but also in some ways, like the best way to be good at something is stack all your chips on the table. This is what I'm going at. Like I can't spin five different plates. I can spin one well. And so like, how do you think about that in life and embrace that in your own life when you're trying to be, really good at one thing important in your life and you only have, a limited amount of time and energy to do, everything.
Yeah, no, I always say is attention is your greatest resource, right? I put time at three, energy at two, attention at one. Because to your point is if you're trying to win a national title and then you say, you know what, like I'm gonna go try to like I'm gonna build a $1 million business while I'm trying to win a national title. Well, like immediately is like you're gonna get distracted. Like you can't give your attention to those two things and expect
Right.
like high-end outcomes. And so is I think this is where like decisions are so hard for, I say young people, 18, 19, 20, is because you as an individual have to decide on what it is that you want. There's no wrong answer, right? Like if you want to be a national champ, if you just want to be in a lineup, or if you don't want to do college athletic, like whatever it is like you have to make that decision because once you give your attention to that, is like that's how you're going to get ultimately like the best results. And I had a coach who had a coach. I'll use a business as example as to kind of like drive this point home a little bit. He had a coach that he wanted to make $10 million, and so he started a business and he made $1 million. So he started a second business, he made $1 million. He started a third business and made $1 million. He's like, oh, I got three businesses, I got $3 million. He's like, this is gonna be easy, right? And so it's like he went from three businesses to 10 businesses, but then he only made $3 million. And it's like because at some point when he started the fourth, the fifth, the other three suffered. And so it's
Yeah.
like he eventually cut nine of those off, focused on one, and now he's like valued at literally like $1 billion business. But it's like you had to give your attention to that thing if you want,
Yeah.
because you're competing with guys that are all in with it, right? Is like they're like to your point earlier, is I think that's a great analogy of like what your coach told you is like there's eight and you got to beat those eight, but those eight are laser focused.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting too. And I don't know, I think sometimes balance is tough for me because I feel like I'm kind of like an all in or all out. But then I also think there's like maybe seasons of life where it's okay to be all in on some stuff, but you got to keep certain things in check. Like I don't ever want to like be all out on, family, friends, like the really important stuff. But it's also like I also want to be good at, my job and stuff I do. I don't want to just like be mediocre there. And so it's like kind of I don't know, ebbs and flow. I'm trying to figure that out for myself. It's like how maybe you can do two or three things really well, but you can't do like three to five things really well. And so it's like
Yeah.
you got to really prioritize. And I wish I could do five different things, but that's just not possible. I can't live five different lives, and so I got to make a decision and prioritize it. And so yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. You talk about identity because I think about that a lot.
Yeah. No, no, no. Well, and I bet too, it's going to the friends aspect is I right or wrong, you probably have a pretty small circle.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so it's like I think where it becomes a distraction is like when you want 100 friends, right? Or you want 30 friends, right? It's like when you're trying to expand that network of like, well, I just want like all the different people versus of like, hey, like I've got my like two, three, four people, and like those are my people. And so it's like I'm gonna give attention to them versus like trying to be the social bumblebee.
Yeah. But I also think there's value in, and like you said, I don't think you can have a bunch of really close relationships and maintain them well. But like there's value in expanding your network and being good at following up and continuing to stay in touch with people, even if that's, a couple touch points a year. And I think that's something that's tough too. And I watched,
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to coach with Rob Cole for a year, and like that guy might be the best networker I know. And he's just really good at like it's like a timer in the back of his head where, and I got some like a mentor of mine where I start thinking about like I haven't talked to him in a while, and just he'll send me a text, and I'm like, that's weird. Like he's just got this timer, and I don't know if he puts alarms or like, but it's something I think that I admire. Is like it's good to be able to stay in touch with people because I don't do a great job with that. I'll get busy in my day to day, and then like going back out and trying to foster some of those relationships. It's like it's important. And maybe I'm somebody that needs to set a reminder on my calendar or something. But yeah, there's I don't know. There's some people that are really good at it and love it.
Well, and I think too is to your point of like being able. So I always think about it like three friends or networks or whatever. I always like put it in three buckets and think about it is the people that I want around me is I want in three different types. I want a group of people that are playing the game of life or whatever above me. I want people that are even with me, and I want people that are below me. And the reason is like I want the people above me to help me, right? So I think about it with like Rob Cole of like he may see you as just like somebody is like, man, like I like really want to continue to help him out, like grow and develop as a coach. And so it's like he has that reminder like for you. So it's like you have the people above you to help you pull you along there. You have the people level with you to keep you motivated, right? It's like we're doing this together. We're in this game. We're going to continue to grow. And it's like these are our ambitions and our dreams that like we want to accomplish over the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years, whatever. And then you have people below you, like I said, is like it's the service, right? Is it's the giving back. It's like people probably helped you along the way. And so it's like kind
Yeah.
of going back of like, hey, like, come on, like let me show you the path. Don't take 10 years. Like we can do it in 6 months. Come on, like let me show you. And so it's like I think
Yeah.
about it of like networking in that way.
Yeah. No, I like it. That's awesome. I've never heard it in like a three framework. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So like total like going off, tell me a little bit about like your side venture.
Side venture.
Like working out, gym, training, nutrition.
Yeah. So we started probably about a year ago, a podcast called Iron Summit, kind of a fitness community. Um, I don't know. I think I've always enjoyed, I think I'm not the first person to say this, but I do think like men just relate to other men a lot better. Like when you're doing activities, like I don't want to go like, I'll go grab coffee with somebody, but I don't really want to go grab coffee with somebody. I want to go like hit a workout, go get a hike in, go play, basketball, do something physical. And so I think it's a really cool spot where, um, I think just growing up, it was like a lot of my buddies. We were really good buddies because we'd go to the gym together, we'd go play sports together, we'd go do stuff
Hmm.
together. And so me and a couple buddies, like we kind of started this. We were just kind of joking around one day, like let's kind of see where this goes. And so it's been really fun. We're kind of starting a community thing on school here coming up this Friday, actually. And so it's just like a lot of, typically, men,
Yeah.
and just kind of a community and everybody trying to level each other up. And, we got training plans. We got some cool sponsors that, have world-class software with, our training programs and stuff like that, health and nutrition guides. Kind of wrestling is where we started with, just kind of being our backgrounds and stuff. And then it's expanded into, general fitness too. So I think there's, a lot of athletes, a lot of wrestlers, and then a lot of just like general meatheads trying to be, jack dudes. So it's been fun. Yeah.
Where do you want like what's the if you have one, I guess, like what's the overarching like goal, like future pace? Like what do you like? Because like you said, it kind of just started out, it sounds like, of like just kind of like hey, we're bros, let's do like some wrestling stuff. And then it just kind of like it's starting to evolve. And so it's like, I guess, like you said, roughly like a year. So like now I'm sure like the picture's starting to get a little more clear and clear and clear of like the direction you want to head with it. And so it's like kind of like future pace. Like what do you want to do with it? Because you said you
Yeah.
guys got a podcast too?
Yeah. Yeah. We got a podcast. And I think one of the coolest things with the podcast is like meeting amazing people like yourself. Like it's fun to just meet people, network. Like it's a really cool networking tool, honestly. I didn't see that when we started it, but it's been really cool. In terms of what we want to do, I don't know yet. I think ideally we want to just keep growing and helping people. I think it's fun. It kind of combines coaching, fitness, business. Like it's been a lot of interests together for me and then for Max and Johnny as well, I think. And so that's been really cool. I don't know exactly where this is going to go. It's been like we're putting a lot of time and effort into it. We're, having fun with it. Ideally like turns into a bigger business,
Yeah.
but I think at the same time, like we're enjoying it. And so that's good for right now. It's like we just keep trying to add value and try to help people. And yeah, kind of creating that community, I think is really cool. And hopefully it gets, really big one day. But if not, like we're having fun what we're doing. And, I think it's been cool too. I think there's a lot of carryover with wrestling stuff. There's a lot of wrestlers that are interested in this stuff. And I think that one of the coolest things that I think I learned through wrestling was, health and fitness. I think if I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about making weight and whether, I don't know that cutting weight's the most healthy thing, but I think the lessons learned, in the right context is really healthy for the rest of your life. I understood, what made me feel good, how to fuel my body for performance. And I think just like as a man, it's like your duty to like be strong and fit, be able to help those around you. And you kind of you're the protector and provider for your family. And so I think that's like I don't know, kind of all part of the baked into that mission of like be
Yeah.
prepared to be an asset to society and not to get too philosophical with
No, I'm
it,
into
but
it.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I think two things. Well, one statement, and then you can piggyback off of it if you want to, and then another question. Going back to like when you said like about like cutting weight, is it maybe not be the most healthy thing? But I always like think back of like wrestlers that have experienced cutting weight typically are extremely disciplined in life because I always say it's like if you can be disciplined like with nutrition and make a weight, then like other things in life to be disciplined with tend to be much easier. And so
Yeah.
I think that like that experience of like whether somebody wrestled 1 year and had one weight cutting experience or somebody that, wrestled 15, 20 years and like experienced multiple like years of that is just like I think that that's yeah, I think you learn to, nutrition and portion sizes and just don't sit down and be a fat ass and eat on the couch all the time, right? Like, but at the same time, it's like that is hard, right? Like you're in high school and everybody's eating in the cafeteria, and it's like you've got your lunch and you've got to stick to it. That's discipline to me, and I think that carries over
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think like that's the best thing about sports is you can put your kids in a struggling environment without them actually struggling. And so I think you build, like you're saying, like a lot of skills, resilience, determination, discipline. Um, the list goes on and on. But I do think specifically cutting weight, like you're saying, it uniquely builds those things because it's not just your 2 hours in practice, it's like your 24 hours throughout the day. And you can't cheat a scale. Like
Yeah.
you either make weight or you don't. And like, but I do think wrestlers typically from what I've seen, go one of two ways. And it's like they like carry those habits, they stay pretty healthy, like and fit the rest of their life, or they're like, I did this, screw this, I'm never gonna cut weight again. I'm never gonna restrict myself again. And they, get a little soft. And I think that that's like I think it's a real thing too. I don't think people talk about it. I don't know if it's great for the sport, but I do think there's some people that like low key develop eating disorders because of cutting
Yeah.
weight. And that's where it's like some people are gonna naturally do that anyways, maybe. But I think that's kind of a coach's job to keep that in check. There's a lot better education around it now, and I don't think coaches are just like, "Hey, you're cutting 30 pounds to make weight to make the lineup now."
Yeah.
So I think that's good. But I do think it's something that you got to be a little bit aware of. Even in football, like I had a lot of football player friends that like after college, they're like, I'm gonna drop 50 pounds because I'm done force feeding myself and just trying to be a big mass monster. And but that's what you got to do for that season of life for that sport. And so yeah, I don't know, good or bad, you learn some habits and hopefully you're learning nutrition along the way and you can, start to do stuff that's for your own goals. It is a little weird when you transition. I think not to ramble too much, going back to Iron Summit stuff, like it's weird getting out of college where it's like you don't have this goal anymore of, it's a performance goal, it's a this goal. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to be able to pick up my grandkids when I'm 80 years old, and so like that's the new goal and that's the end goal. Now let me break it down into smaller goals and how do I get there? And so I think I don't know. some people work out just because it's healthy for you. Like I think a lot of athletes work out because it's like the mental benefits, like it's fun,
Yeah,
they enjoy
yeah,
it. Like it's more of a hobby. And
yep,
I think trying to get more people to see athletics or just like any kind of fitness that way is kind of our goal too. It's like, hey, I don't care what you do, we'll help you with what your goals are. But like, the best program done for a couple of weeks isn't going to do anything for you. So let's find something sustainable for you that you like to do. And then, hopefully that turns into a lifelong habit that increases your quality of life the rest of your life.
yeah, yeah. Your ass gotta stay in shape. So when them kids try you,
I
be,
I keep I keep telling my wife, I'm like, listen, I can't be too old when we have kids because if they're wrestlers and I'm like, I'm starting to get up there in age and they come back from college, I need to be able to, put a whooping on it, but we'll see. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be wrestling when I'm 45, 50 years old, but we'll see. See how these knees hold up.
oh man, oh knees, back, hips, the whole nine.
And ankle surgery this year. Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh man. All right, two more questions. Totally unrelated. Is I want to like ask about like the faith side of like things for you. Has that like
Sure.
always been a thing, or is that something that, recently or in college and just kind of like I'm always just curious with that. Like just people's like journey on that end of things.
Yeah, I love that question. I think growing up, we went to church a lot. I remember going to like vacation Bible school in the summers. Like we'd go every Sunday. And then I got, two siblings. And so like probably around middle school, high school area, like it just got busy. Everybody had some kind of sport event every weekend. And so we kind of turned into more maybe Easter and Christmas and sparingly Sundays if there wasn't, a practice,
Yeah.
tournament, game, whatever. Um, so I was aware of it, but I don't know that I really believed it. It was like I went because my parents told me to go, and my
Yeah.
parents were Christians. Um, I got to college, and we had like this guy's name's Lance, and he was awesome. And he walked into our practice one day. He worked for Athletes in Action at Northwestern, which is like the Christian group, and he like just before practice, I don't know how he got in. He talked to one of our coaches who was very it was nice of him to let him, like I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah. Yeah.
random guy
Yeah.
coming in. And he like had this rap prepared and it was kind of like a cheesy Christian rap. And dude's awesome. Like he's an awesome guy. So I don't want to sound like I'm bashing him at all. But like after he was done, he like put it on. He's like, hey, if anybody's interested in like some Christian stuff on campus, like here's some papers, fill it out, we'll contact you. And like I look around and like all my teammates, like nobody's getting up. And I'm like, I feel bad for this guy. That was ballsy. Like he got up there and did that. So I fill out this sheet and he texts me. And then I was like, I don't know. I was a freshman. I'm young. I'm like too nervous to say no. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll grab coffee with you. Like, sure. And so I just started meeting up with him. And then another guy came in, Parker, who wrestled at NIU. And so I connected with him well too. And so we just started meeting up. And then I started going to AIA. We started a team Bible study. And then Parker was the officiant in my wedding this summer. So I feel like college is where I really like it became my own
Yeah.
thing. But I feel like God kind of pulled me in because I was like, I honestly answered, like, I picked up the contact card and wrote down my phone number because I felt bad for this guy that I'm like, that took some balls. You showed up and rapped in front of 30 dudes and it was a little cheesy. And so I'll act like I'm interested. So it was cool.
That's hilarious. So what made you like after the first conversation, what kind of like lured you in? What was kind of like the okay, like there's like substance to this. Like this is something that like I want to like learn more about, like venture down because like I guess you could have like after the first one be like, "Nah, dude, I'm busy. I'm good.
Yeah,
Appreciate the coffee."
yeah, I don't know. I think honestly, like part of me was I don't know. They did a good job of meeting me where I was at. And then part of me was like, I just like felt bad saying no. It's like, I got to go to a couple of these first. And then I was started, they kind of got me. I was like, dang it. That was interesting. Like I'm like going back and like thinking about stuff, writing stuff down. And so then, and then it kind of came like to if I'm going to believe this, like, let me try to poke some holes in this. And they
Yeah.
loved it. And they're like giving me great answers. And I'm like, dang it, this is like really good. And so I don't know. It just like, they did a great job. I thought it was really cool. I've been lucky enough to do some like FCA wrestling camps and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think it's really cool to kind of tie that to sport because yeah, and they're still going on. I still get notifications and like group me that they're still doing it at Northwestern. But there's, a bunch of wrestlers and Bible studies that I don't know. I think there's kind of a cheesy stigma to most Christian stuff. And so it's cool that like guys feel like they can go to that and do that. And I think a lot of athletes are doing a good job of making that like more, I don't know, available to people and more like
Yeah,
normalized. And so yeah, I don't know. It was cool. They met us where we're at and they were like super relatable and like didn't shy away from stuff.
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I did not expect a story like that. So, when you met your wife, was she already like faith-based, or like did y'all how did that, was that pre-meeting her or post-meeting her? Like when you kind of got started getting involved?
Yeah, I probably started freshman year. I met her probably junior year.
Oh yeah.
But she was definitely Christian. She definitely had some like questions, and it took me like a little bit of like, hey, let's go to church, let's do this, Like she always, I think she was always Christian. She already had that foundation. But I think she was kind of where I was at, like when I
Yeah.
started, where it was like, I believe this, but like I gotta like kind of dig into this. And now, like she's dragging me to church on Sunday. She loves it. So it was cool. Like, not that I was maybe a little bit deeper in faith when we met, but yeah, she was right in it really quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. All right, last question. If you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
Consistency kills. I'm a huge fan of consistency. I think a lot of what we talked about today, like I don't know, man. Like you're probably I promise you, I don't know, you know, I'm not a smart dude. Like I mean, I'm smart enough, I guess, but
You're at
I'm not like
Stanford, damn
some,
it, you're smart.
I'm not in like I just think you give somebody 20 years, you can figure out anything. Like
Yeah.
expand your time horizon, continue to like consistently put in the work on something. I just refuse to believe you can't learn something. Some people will learn it quicker, but if you consistently do something for a long period of time, I think that's a secret sauce to doing anything well. So then it's just like picking what you think is valuable enough to consistently do for a long period of time.
Heck yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, cool, man. This has been fun. I appreciate it. I don't even know, like I probably told you in a message or an email or whatever, is like that's kind of like the purpose of like the podcast is like I feel like stories are like what move people. And so it's like I feel like the more stories that people hear from just different perspectives and different lenses is like people gain like once they perceive things from that lens is like it drives them to take some kind of action or make a decision or something like that. And so it's like, the more stories, the more analogies that are out there is like I just feel like the more people will like pull the trigger on like whatever it is that they want to do, whether it be asking a girl out, going to athletes in action, or like, whatever, something in the athletic world. So man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I completely agree. I love hearing stories, love talking to people, and yeah, thank you.
Hell yeah. Until next time, everybody. Peace.